Welcome to PowerTalk Show powered by Business Talks Weekly. Our guest today has 15 plus years of experience in fintech and payment space. He is currently building a leading payment platform which actually lends money not on credit score but on the income. Peter Maher from Avantis. Peter, welcome to the PowerTalk Show.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And nice to meet you, Navin.
Thank you so much. It is our pleasure to have you on board, Peter. Peter, like before we start our conversation, can you tell us a bit about your background, your journey, and what led to the creation of Avantis?
Yeah. So the company that I'm launching and building here in the US is called FLOTE. We're a wholly owned subsidiary of a parent company on the Australian Stock Exchange called Ovanti. And it's FLOTE. My background, essentially, I've been in consumer credit for the last few years. Prior to that, I was in business to business finance with AP automation and such, but I wasn't always in this space, right? For me, I'm somebody I learn a lot from mistakes and reflecting back on things that I would have done differently or how things could be done differently from past experiences. And I think a lot of people do. But for me, I've always had, an idea in mind in the US around there has to be an alternative to traditional historical legacy credit, right? There's so many people out there that need a little bit of float, need a little bit of cash flow breathing room, liquidity easing. And so I can relate to that personally because at one point, in my early 20s, late teens, I made a mistake that was my fault. Small mistake, a couple $1,000s, but I wrecked my credit. That one mistake lowered my credit score to a point where I was almost entirely excluded from loans for the next, close to a decade. Right. And it's a hard thing to go through because you have times where you're applying for an apartment, you need to buy a car, you just want to get something smaller, you just need a little bit of credit, right? It's hard to get that. It's hard to get that breathing room when you're in that position. And the way in which our model in the US and a lot of places in the world is the more you need a little bit of help, the harder it is to get. And so, for me, I've had this feeling that just like credit score is not an indicator of affordability. It's a lagging metric. So I got the opportunity to come over here and put pen to paper on building out a concept around consumer finance where we can give people a little bit of liquidity, a little bit of breathing room based around their actual unique personal cash flow circumstance. So how often are they paid? What are their balances? And so we're able to decision somebody based on their actual financial capacity, not some score that says what they're worth based on something that maybe went right or wrong in their life or a lagging metric.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much, Peter, for sharing that with us. Peter, I want to understand with Float, who are you addressing and what is the primary challenge as an end user that he can resolve?
Yeah. So, kind of our wedge audience is in the US. That's our market that we're tackling first. But you've got about half the consumer population that, for one reason or another, doesn't really qualify in the traditional credit systems for whether it's a credit card, traditional loan, even most buy now, pay later companies, right? And so, a leading indicator of that is 30 to 50% of all consumer transactions in the US with retailers today are still debit and cash, sometimes more. And it's largely because that's their only payment method. And so these consumers are constantly having to make the choice when they're living paycheck to paycheck most often. Do I eat up all my liquidity to get something that I need or want to experience life, or do I just pass on it altogether? And so our target market to start is the half of the US population that is largely limited to just their available cash on hand and debit.
That's a huge market.
But the beauty of it, it's a huge market. But the beauty of it is it's really for everyone too. We're going to market with similar to a BNPL product, but that's really the wedge. The real proprietary value of our business behind the scenes is our cash flow risk and credit decisioning model, right? Which can be applied to once it's seasoned a bit and tested and we're able to kind of have alternative scoring and decisioning off of it. It can be applied to so many things beyond just short-term consumer finance.
Absolutely. And Peter, do you believe the traditional BNPL method is broken? Because I see a lot of companies that come into buy now and pay later model. They don't actually succeed. What is your take on that?
Yeah. Well, it's a hard market to break into. And also there's a lot of companies that are taking the same model and just trying to do it a different way. right? I think you have to have something incredibly unique. For us, buy now, pay later, kind of like I said, that's the tip of the spear. That's our wedge. That's something people need to be able to buy car parts. They need to be able to buy clothing. They deserve to take their kids to a ball game or a sporting event if they want to, and not have to choose between that or getting a car part or whatever they need to do. So for us, we're not aimed at being the next Klarna, right? We're aimed at building an engine that enables everyday people who are largely locked out of those sorts of companies to be able to transact and experience life the same as everyone else without the unnecessary cash flow bottlenecks. Right. And so there's a lot of companies that come and they decide they're going to be buy now, pay later for automotive, or they're going to be buy. Right. It doesn't work. Sorry. But they're still on the same model. But yeah, so you can't just be going after a different target market, right? There needs to be something entirely different about your model,
Interesting. And
right? And so for us, no, it's massive. It's already played a huge part for us. I mean, we built with a small team of developer partners, right? And like very small, and then a staff count of less than 10. We built our entire credit risk and decisioning model and the platform and the MVP, which was ready to go. We're already testing it live with transactions. We did that in a few months and a couple $1 million, right? And so like Agentic plays a huge piece in building this. But then additionally, we're first to market with a very unique proprietary credit and risk decisioning model, right? But it's young, right? So it needs to be seasoned. It needs to be tested. It needs to be, experienced. We can use things like multiple agents and agentics and machine learning to season that model in countless numbers of scenarios, right, behind the scenes versus having to rely on just one real live transaction at a time. We can use it to run different environments and circumstances and outcomes. It's not one of those things where figure out a way to be doing it with your business. If you're not using it at the core of your business, you're going to fall behind and it unbelievably quickly.
Absolutely makes sense. And Peter, any financial business or instrument goes through a lot of security and regulations. What kind of regulations and security have you put into place with Float?
Yeah. So that's probably the biggest thing that a fintech needs to be prepared for is compliance regulation. And that's important everywhere, but also in the US, we've got federal regulation like the CFPB and such, but then also every state to an extent views cash flow models entirely differently, right? So you need to be really much on your forefront in terms of consumer data protection, the disclosures that you're putting out there, making sure that you're operating in a regulator friendly environment. Right. So you have to be very, very proactive. One of the first things we started doing is before we even started actually building the product was mapping out our regulatory and compliance and security strategies. Right. And then it's just something where, again, especially in the US, regulations change often. Right. And so you have to be ready. You have to keep your finger up in the air and feeling for that wind to change and be ready to address it. And so we've spent a lot of time putting together our security and regulatory strategy and compliance strategy, but it'll be a never ending
It will be
build.
never ending. And Peter, can you give us a bit of an insight? How many active users do you have in the beta model, and what kind of adoption are you seeing?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of excitement right now with us. It's friends and family, small test groups. We're getting ready to roll out. We're selecting some of our random groups that we're going to be deploying the platform to over the next month or so. But we've built it. It's ready to go in the app stores, but it's in development mode. So you can't just go download it. But what we are doing is we're running a lot of guerrilla campaigns, building up social media hype. And we've got if you go to flote.com, FLOTE, you'll see that there's an option there for the waitlist. That's very new and it's growing rapidly. So we've got a lot of excitement early on of people that want to be first users into the platform.
Wow, that's very interesting. And what kind of feedback are you getting from your beta friends and family users?
When you're talking about beta, like the mission is to break it, right? So that's the other thing is that I'd say to anybody that's launching, especially a payments platform, is put it through the ringer, right? Like when you're like, MVP, right? It's minimum viable product, right? So I think we've gotten past our MVP to, we joke our MLP, the minimum lovable product, because it looks pretty. We're very proud of it. But at the same time, like we need people to tell us what's wrong with it and break it, give us feedback, tell us, anything about their experience that they would like to see more. Because those are the things that we want to get ahead of. But in general, the feedback's exceptional because the reality is you can use it and people see when it's released, you can use it to spread out your liquidity anywhere from day one. You'll be able to tap to pay in store. You'll be able to shop online. It's not just with specific merchants that we have integrations with. It'll be anywhere that MasterCard's accepted in the US. So it's very cool. It's very innovative. I've said this before, but I said it a few weeks ago jokingly, and it's just rung true with me. And it's like building something from scratch and having a startup is like inviting Murphy's Law to join you for breakfast every single day. Like what can go wrong will go wrong. And you just have to be prepared for that, right? Whatever you think you have, be leaner, right? A lot of people, they budget to what they have, what they can do. And that's not just cash flow. That's headcount, that's resources, that's time, right? Go leaner than you think, right? Give yourself that rainy day breathing room, save time every day to handle the unexpected surprises, right? Have a plan in place with your team to address them. But that being said, like if you can get comfortable with uncertainty, right? And you can stay focused on the mission and focus on the minimum viable product. So many people try to release the final version as their first version and end up dead on the vine. Like you'll do great, but just, make sure that you're ready for a controlled amount of chaos every single day.
Absolutely.
Because, it's funny. You learn really quickly, and you have to be real with yourself. You learn really quickly if it's for you or not.
Yeah, that's true.
And luckily for me, like I've always said, and it's proven more and more and more. You give me tons of chaos with tons of potential, and that is where I'm going to thrive. Right? Yeah. So for us, we say affordability for good, right? And so affordability for good, meaning for the better, right? We can build something that is financial innovation without financial exploitation that levels the playing field for people a lot more and makes their lives just a little bit easier to navigate every day. But we also say for good as in forever, right? And so for us, we want to change the playing field forever, right? Like our BNPL is the wedge, but our credit risk and decisioning model, that's the thing we can take out and, allow auto lenders eventually to potentially use our credit risk and decisioning model to be able to get vehicles and transportation for people that are currently really struggle to get that today, right? We can do things in the future that works that we can look at where it's like, borderless liquidity pools where people can put, fiat assets and tokenized assets to work to fund to invest in businesses like us. So it's not just held out for the big institutions. There's a lot that we can do with this model. So in the near term, we're focused on, user acquisition and showing that this works incredibly well in an environment that people kind of understand, which is short-term consumer finance, BNPL. But it's taking that model that unlocks affordability for good and scaling it out to other use cases broadly.
Absolutely. I understand it's very early for you, but if I ask, like, is there anything you would have done differently so far in your journey?
Yeah, I think we all do. We all have things that we would have done differently at the micro level, right? There's conversations that I wish had different outcomes. There's, initiatives that I wish we had prioritized maybe a little bit earlier or different, in life and in starting a business. But I don't really dwell on those things because I really like the outcome, right?
Absolutely. The end result is the game.
I think I think at the end of the day, it's knowing the things that you would have been done differently. Sometimes they can be in the form of mistakes. Sometimes they can be in the form of just outcomes, but like, it's just about being aware of them and learning from them and then allowing them to kind of season and evolve your thought process moving forward into future things. I look back, the biggest thing, one of the toughest things I went through, most unnecessary things I went through was when I chose to wreck my credit, when I took out a credit card when I was 19 and went on spring break and then didn't pay it back. That was 100% my fault. Right. And, I had a great spring break, but, I look back and it's like half of my 20s, I wish I hadn't done that. Right. It was such in the moment, a terrible mistake. Right. But that led to me experiencing a lot of the burdens and pains and things where, it didn't take me long to get to a place where I was in a great cash flow situation in my 20s, but I still had no credit. Right. And the frustration that I went through every day, wishing that I'd done something differently, ultimately played a huge part in something I got to put my hands on and build down the road.
Maybe
right?
that's why you are the best person to lead FLOTE.
I know what our users are going through and have been through, and whether it's their fault or not, it was my fault. But like, it's not easy, right? And so I think it's more just staying in touch with the things that maybe could have gone differently and using them to and applying them to your decision making in the future and how you view the world, right?
That's wonderful. Peter, one last question, and I usually ask this to all my guests. One piece of advice did you receive that changed your perspective professionally and personally?
Man, it was early in my career that I'm lucky enough to have a couple of really good mentors. Early in my career, I'd had a bad day, right? And it was maybe a series of bad days. And I was with my friend Marion, and I remember I was griping to him, and I was just kind of unloading, kind of, it's not fair. I can't believe this is happening, like yada, yada. But I don't even remember what I was upset about or what I was like seeking his advice on, but I'll never forget. He kind of cut me off and he said, Petey, the worst day that you ever live will be better than somebody's best. Right. And so to me, while it was a little extreme in the moment, right, to me, I think about that advice and with work, with my personal life, with everything. And it's just like, we all have bad days and sometimes it gets you and catches up to you, but you need to pause and take a step back and realize like, I'm here, I'm getting to work on something. There's a problem I'm trying to fix or a company I'm trying to build or a relationship I need to strengthen, but I have that opportunity. It's not that bad. Right. And so I think that, and just kind of combined with some things I've done outside of work have have really like shaped my ability to sit in what a lot of people get stuck in as tough, hard situations and have a perspective on them of, I don't got problems. I have work to do. Right.
That
And so I think that advice and different versions of that advice have really, really helped me to address life and business
wow.
in a very productive way.
Well, that's some great piece of advice and interesting point of view to life and professional work as well. Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much for joining us on a podcast today. It was a delightful conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.